Hello everybody, it's AJ back again with the Mighty Glue Stick. How's it going? And today I'm going to be covering the Shardmind. Congratulations to all of you who guessed that. The Shardmind is a creature, it's a playable race, ostensibly humanoid, although they are made of actual crystal. And they are animated purely by psychic energy. And the history and the reason for their existence is extremely nerdy and deep in the lore of Dungeons & Dragons. It was expanded slightly in 4th edition, which is why I say that it will be of interest to people who have skipped 4th edition. But they've been around in the D&D lore for a while. And I feel the need to explain where they come from and why they exist in the overall cosmology and plot of Dungeons & Dragons. But first, let's talk about what they actually are. There are those of you, as a caveat, there are those of you who don't like the Warforged, for instance. They don't think that they have any place in Forgotten Realms. There are those of you who don't like psychic power in Dungeons & Dragons and think that it could be gotten rid of in favour of like the key energy of monks or just arcane power or divine power. You don't need psychic energy. It's covered by the rules already. But it plays into the idea of what the Far Realm is, for instance, and what the Shardmind is animated by. And there's a whole world of plot and intrigue and cause and events that can be introduced if you have a character with psychic energy in the game that plays into their greater story. So you can have moments in the game which allow them as a player to shine, and their character comes to the fore and saves the day, which I think is an important aspect of any game that you're running, to give everybody a moment where their character really comes into their own and they get to be the hero. So Shardminds are crystalline creatures consisting of hundreds of small shards of translucent green, white, red, or amber crystal assembled into humanoid form and animated by a force of pure psychic energy. They choose this form to mimic the shapes of humanoids. Some take on the forms that seem more masculine, others appear more feminine. Their animating force glows dimly from within with each of the component shards, and this emanation is brighter when they have their eyes shining on an object, when they're looking out through their eyes. That focus of psychic energy comes out as a natural luminance. The inner light sheds a dim light in a Shardmind's immediate space, but an individual can squelch it. They can dim it down intentionally with a moment's concentration, and so they can hide in the dark, for example. So the crystalline fragments making up a Shardmind's body are constant, silent motion. They move around. It's almost like it's a psychic energy pulling those shards together, and they don't really fit together completely locked in smoothly. They are actually floating around like Ioun stones, and they move, and which allows the Shardmind to move around relatively silently. So they're not exactly touching. They require no sustenance. They don't breathe. They don't need to sleep, although they still rest for 6 hours to gain the benefits of an extended rest. They don't use gender, they don't reproduce, and they're alive, but they aren't a biological entity. What happened was they sprang to life during the Dawn War. They say that they were part of a living gate that was shattered into countless fragments, and each time a Shardmind is killed, another one somewhere in the universe stirs to consciousness. So the crystals organize themselves and that consciousness spreads out. Whether they are connected through some sort of super consciousness is debatable. They have a natural enemy in the form of a creature known as the Quaar, but I will get to them at the end of this video just to explain a little bit about what they are. So they are sentient fragments of the living gate, which once stood at the pinnacle of the intricate lattice of the Astral Sea. Beyond the gate lay the Far Realm, and the gate's destruction during the Dawn War resulted in the rise of the Flayer Empire and the flooding of the prime material planes with psychic energy. And though through Ioun's power holds the portal closed, Ioun, one of the gods of magic, Shardminds seek to return the gate and forever cut off the Far Realm's ability to influence the world. So they actually seek to cement the astral lattice once again to completely block off the Far Realm in every way. Now, lattice sort of implies that it's above and beyond, and the Astral Sea is quite often seen by people in their mind's eye as above and beyond the planes or surrounding the planes. The Astral Sea is, of course, the dimension of thought, and it pervades everything. It's a medium that everything floats in. It's the realm of ideas and goals and things like that. So that's where the aligned planes of gods comes into play, and this is where the gods originally came from the Astral Sea. The Shardmind society are one of pure thought given life and substance. They are logical, emotionally distant, naive to the ways of society and biological creatures. Some approach life with innocent curiosity, eager to embrace the wealth of experience that the world has to offer. Others remain detached and aloof. They have a higher purpose in mind at all times. They exist for a reason. They are driven solely for one purpose, and that is a purpose that could possibly take millions of years. Though they often seem dispassionate, when strong emotion seizes them, they experience a powerful surge of it, uncontrolled, unchecked. So they don't have adrenaline and things like that. So that they don't become exhausted by their emotions, and their emotions don't resolve in a biological sense. They come to a point of view that drives them like an obsession, and then ebbs as situations change. So yeah, they don't get annoyed. They become enraged. So yeah, they one moment they're perfectly calm, and the next moment they'll snap. They reach their breaking point, so to speak. So the race as a whole shares a common goal of rebuilding the living gate. Several philosophies within that goal disagree on how to accomplish that goal, but the three most important sects are the Thought Builders, the God Shards, and the Shard Slayers. So yeah, their Shardmind names are, for example, Balashi, Ishumu, Hunzu, Dipana, Erishti, Litani, etc., etc. But they could be nearly anything. Their traits as a species, as a player race, they have an intelligence score increased by 2. They don't age. They are formed fully mature. They can be of any alignment. The size is 5'9" to 6'2". They're classed as medium creatures. Base walking speed is 30 feet. They communicate telepathically with any creature within 30 feet that can understand them. They have resistance to psychic damage, and they are classed as a living construct, similar to Warforged. Though they were constructed, they are humanoids, they are immune to disease, they do not need to eat or breathe. They can ingest food and drink if they want to, but it's not biologically digested. It's just they ingest it, chew it up, store it inside them, and then expel it later. They sustain philosophical enjoyment of textures and things like that, and the substance, the molecular substance of a thing fascinates them. So some of them eat just to fit in, and they gain some sort of intellectual enjoyment from it. They speak common. Their voices are the way that the crystals and things move around. They can funnel air through their bodies, and they can resonate crystals to form any sort of a normal sort of voice, or you could come up with some sort of crystalline whining twang to their voice if you wanted to mimic what you think your Shardminds sound like. But they're just as comfortable speaking telepathically to those who are nearby them within 30 feet. But to communicate further than that, they'll either need to boost their telepathy or vibrate the air normally like normal speech does. There are subraces called the Shard Swarm or the Far Shard. The Shard Swarm, they are constructed from hundreds of small shards, and they can temporarily loosen the mental grip on the form, becoming a swarm of swirling shards. So they increase their charisma by 1, and they have a special ability as an action to break the body apart and move 15 feet and reform. And the movement does not provoke opportunity attacks. Each creature adjacent to the Shardmind must make a dexterity saving throw, and the DC is 8 plus the intelligence modifier plus the proficiency score. And creatures who fail the saving throw take 1d10 piercing damage and must rest before they can The shard swarm must rest before using this action again. Yeah, they have crystalline containment, which can enclose up to your light load worth of equipment. Its essence magically stored inside the crystal that are part of the swarm, and the equipment appears back in the normal position when they assume humanoid form again. So essentially they just pick up their equipment inside them when they form that swarm, and then move it in a parcel and then reform with the equipment back in place. So the equipment doesn't drop to the ground when they do that, just tying up a loose end. The crystalline body can incorporate any armor and weapons made from mundane crystal or deep crystal, or be part of the swarm of crystals, and it will break into smaller crystals when you enter the swarm form, the crystal form, the swarm form, and then convey its bonuses still. But it has to be of a crystalline structure, like deep crystal or mundane crystal. So you can wear equivalent armor that your DM provides to you, and rematerialize into the armor when they re-enter humanoid form. Their crystalline hands, unarmed attacks do 1d4 bludgeoning or piercing damage for the shard swarms. So they're physically dynamic, and you could play with that idea of them being able to turn into a swirl of crystals and then move through tight spaces. Far shards are Shardminds originating from the side of the living gate close to the far realm, so they are tainted somewhat, but they are potent in that psychic ability. So the psychic power of the far realm has leached into them. Their bodies become more fluid, constructed from semi-liquid crystals, and they have the propensity for psychic powers. Their ability score increase is wisdom increases by +1. And they look different from other Shardminds in that they can look more humanoid because of that semi-liquid movement of the crystals gives them a more rounded appearance instead of so angular. They have psychic abilities that imitate some sort of psychic, or basically they can imitate the Featherfall spell or the Mage Hand spell. Same basic thing. So they don't count towards the maximum spells known. They can innately cast them whenever, and they use their ability score as for any stat-based stuff on that. So that's the basic stats of the Shardminds. And now we get into the history of these creatures, and it all begins right back at the beginning with the god of the Greyhawk world, or Earth, known as Tharizdun. Tharizdun, otherwise known as the Elemental Eye, the Chained God. He's a dark god. He of eternal darkness. His symbol is a dark spiral or an inverted pyramid. He's neutral evil. Well, originally was neutral evil. Common worshippers back in the original place were human. Favoured weapon of their priests was daggers, and his domains were chaos, destruction, evil, knowledge, madness, and runes. Divine spellcasters, however, cannot prepare or cast spells from him unless they are in contact or in close proximity to an object or site imbued with some of Tharizdun's power, or enabled in some magical way to connect to their deity in some fashion. This is because Tharizdun is imprisoned in another universe by all of the other gods for what he did in his mad rash action to gain power. Now, there's a lot of contention about the order of events, but I'll give a good description of what somebody else wrote. So I'm just going to read it at verbatim. It may be a little bit disjointed and not my usual style, but I think it sums it up really well. So, and I quote, "I think the primordials making the world as their coalesced material sandbox that they played around in, the gods walked up to the table and, why, that looks very interesting. Can we play?" And then they made much more sophisticated creations. Moradin recarved mountains. They gave it all a more permanent nature and wrote rules for the evolving game. So this is talking about primordials creating worlds, and then gods going, "Ooh, that's good, and we want to make it more permanent. We want to make ecosystems, things like that. We want a subtle game." The Titans and the Giants may well have been the result of primordials trying to copy the art of the gods. The world seemed to have gone on far too long for a long time and be reasonably stable. Chromatic Dragon Kingdom of Maruget reportedly lasted for 100,000 years. I question that entirely. I don't think that's accurate. Yeah, anyway, okay, we'll skip ahead. To answer the timeline question, the Dawn War either started as a result of the primordials upturning the table and saying, "We want to reform the world again, this is getting boring," or the creation of the Abyss, and this is where Tharizdun comes in. I've always seen it as primarily a war between primordials and elemental allies, rather than involving demons, because the demons came about as the Abyss. The primordials got tired of slowly evolving world and the rulebook and wanted to start over again. Hence, the two factions broke along party lines and started to argue about resetting the world. So the Living Gate has long since been discovered by the three gods. Now, this is a legend of how the Living Gate was discovered and came to be broken. So at the top of the lattice of the Astral Sea, three gods went back to the dawn of time and went, "Ooh, what's this? It's separating this universe or these universes from something else, something outside." And they determined that on the outside of it was a realm of ultimate chaos and instability and foreignness called the Far Realms, the Far Realm, where many layers of reality were sandwiched together, almost like it was the core of the very high and weird dimensional states that blended into each other, with some planes of existence only being centimeters wide or thick, and sometimes you could see multiple realities superimposed all into each other at once. Some of the planes were living, and they were just stock with craziness and potent psychic power. I mean, if you have an entire reality which is alive, it's going to have a lot of mental oomph. Anyway, so it had been discovered by three gods. It seems that to have been incorporated into the lattice of heaven, and the Oberiths, the third-party beings from outside the universe, they whispered into Tharizdun, and he gets the shard of evil from them. So a shard of ultimate evil came from another universe, and it corrupted Tharizdun. The Oberiths seem to have wanted him to use the Shard of Evil in the Astral Sea. Instead, he outsmarted them and put it in the elemental chaos as a weapon of mass destruction. And also, he wanted to turn the chaos of the primal elemental chaos and use it to create an army of his own to best the primordials and the elementals. Maybe Tharizdun thought that the demons that resulted would obey him as they formed. If so, he was sorely disappointed. The formation of the Abyss weakens the elemental chaos. Demons fight everything, and so the primordials and elementals now have to fight demons as well as gods. And so events have gone beyond the world of that they were. So the primordials sidestepped it and attacked the lattice of heaven, shattering it. And demons don't really get into the act until Asmodeus steals a fragment of the shard, and the blood war eventually begins. This is what caused the blood war. So Asmodeus goes, "Ooh, here's a shard of evil that has broken the natural laws and can create an infinite amount of living creatures that, these animated entities that don't necessarily have souls, but I can use it to form bodies and reform bodies and things and house souls in these bodies." So he takes it, and of course it allows him divine control over devils and other things. So this is a potent artifact that Asmodeus has that elevated him close to godhood. And of course, it started the blood war. So yeah, the devils pretty much existed before the demons did, and demons came into being as a result of the Dawn War and the one of the gods trying to break reality to mess with them, really. So it was a cataclysmic thing. This is the thing with Dungeons and Dragons in the universe, the formation of the Dungeons and Dragons universe. The events of the Dawn War and before caused radical reshifting of reality itself. So, reality itself was going crazy. The Astral Sea, structure of the Astral Sea got broken. During the Spell Plague, for instance, Mystra gets killed by two other gods, Shar and Sirik, and the structure of magical power throughout the Forgotten Realms gets destroyed. And the blue fire, which is abyssal energy and far realm energy bleeding into what would normally have been the flow of magic, causes the blue fire to just rage out of control and spread throughout the universe, the multiverse. And Io can't do anything about it because the corruption of the Spell Plague is coming from outside of creation. It's coming from the far realm, outside of his purview of control. But that's another story. So we get back to this living gate, the crystal gate that is broken by Tharizdun. And this causes these crystals, these psychically charged crystals, to splinter and travel throughout the Astral Sea, and thereby through the portals of the Astral Sea to almost every plane of existence, to every location. And these crystals are scattered everywhere. Now, the thing about the crystal gate is that it was a living gate. It was an entity. It was a god. Not only that, but it was a perfectly ordered and structured god that had psychic potential. It was alive. It was aware. It was conscious. Inside it was another race. It was a self-contained race called the Quaar, who lived in perfect harmony. They lived in perfection. Their every desire was met and catered to by their god, this crystal lattice. When the crystal lattice was destroyed, when the living gate was destroyed, the Quaar were thrown out into the universe, and their perfection was destroyed wantonly, with no reason. And they are extremely upset about this. It has driven them to a mad obsession where they travel throughout the universe, throughout the Astral Sea and every other plane of existence, seeking to reclaim the shards of their home, their god, and reincorporate it and put it back together so that the living gate will exist again, thereby sealing off the far realm once more and recreating their home and their living god, so that they can actually be a part of their god again and move around inside it. This, of course, puts them in direct opposition to anyone who uses any of the crystal shards. Some of the Ioun stones, for instance, may be crystal shards. Some magical artifacts or legendary artifacts may be powered and have an intricate part of them. It may be these crystal shards. Some individuals may have crystal shards in their body and not even realize it. And if they come across a Quaar, the Quaar will think nothing of killing them to retrieve it. So their obsession is collecting the crystal shards. Shardminds are top of their hit list for reclaiming shards. Even though the Shardminds are elements, they're almost like avatars of their living god. They're the shattered fragments of this living god's consciousness, taking on small humanoid form to essentially do exactly the same thing. The Quaar are so obsessed with the travesty of it that they think nothing of capturing the Shardminds, taking them, disincorporating them if need be, if they don't come willingly, and collecting up those crystal shards for their own purpose. But it's been such a long time, and the hope of this happening is so dim that they are kind of twisted in their outlook and what they do. So Shardminds, yeah, how you use them in your game is really up to you. As player characters, they have that fascinating history. They have that subplot of psychic power and psychic events and things. They are separated. They're both an intimate part of the natural order and also a little bit touched by the outside. So yeah, they have a different perspective on things. They're not constructs. They formed naturally per se. They're not vulnerable to the same sort of thing that Warforged are, being crystalline creatures. And they are viable player characters and entities. They have hit points and things like that. They have, stats. They're individuals, and they have their own hopes and goals and dreams. And yeah, they can be interesting to play. Whether you want to incorporate them into your game or not, it's up to you, but they're an interesting option. And of course, they're canonical. They're legit. They've been around for a while. So that's Shardminds for you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that little trip into the weirdness of the past. I'll talk more about the Dawnwatched in a later video where I want to cover it in some depth. That will probably be part of my Explores series. And as always, thank you very much for my patrons. Thank you very much for all the people who comment on the videos. Thank you very much for all the people who have chosen to subscribe or are thinking about doing so now. And I'll catch you again midweek with another Explores series, and on the weekends with more Monster Ecology videos. Thanks very much. See you again soon.